Hey everyone, thanks for clicking. In this video I'm going to show you some tips and tricks for doing some fuel lines and fuel filters on your old classic bike. And then we're going to go ahead and get this thing running by doing some work with air filters, throttle cables, ignition switch, and then the exhaust. But you're going to hear it run, and we'll maybe even take it for a spin. So stick around, and I hope you enjoy the video. So I thought this was going to take a lot longer to diagnose. I was thinking I had a bad coil because I had spark on only one side. And like I said, I stopped working on this bike because I ran out of time because I had to move, and so this thing went into storage. So I didn't have much time to mess with it. But I just hooked the battery back up and cranked it over, did some checks, and then I figured I'd just do something basic. I just adjusted the points, clean them up, and I have spark on both sides. So you're not gonna be able to see that probably. See that one, but yeah, spark on both sides. So coil's good, points are good, condenser's good, carbs are rebuilt, and it's ready to go. So I think what I'm gonna do next is go ahead and start putting it all back together, and I have to actually finish rebuilding the ignition switch. I'll show you what went wrong with that. So this was the ignition switch wiring harness. Whenever I got the bike, it was completely thrashed and just unsafe. It wasn't very consistent. It's all cut up, so I've just made a new loom with repinned the end, and then I'm either going to put different terminals on the existing ignition switch, or just try to find a replacement and just kind of start over again. I don't know, because this one's not in the best of shape, but it does work. So anyway, that's small potatoes. So I ended up, instead of just repairing the ignition switch and rewiring it to the factory switch, I ended up just buying a different one. It already had the plug on it for what I wired onto the bike. And this is just an MGO switch. It's nothing extravagant. It was like 15 bucks or whatever. But I figure, time is money, so spend 15 bucks and save an hour. And yeah, so I just throw this on the bike, and I'll have to repin this side to match, just whatever's on the bike there as far as where the terminal locations are. So just swap a few around and it'll be good to go. It is a lovely day outside. Got some projects going here. Super hot rod scooter. What do you think? It's the Live Laugh Love edition. 80cc though. This thing's no joke. It'll get you fools. I'm high ride out here. We're just having fun. But anyway, on a serious note, I'm actually in the garage working on the CL350. And I need to go ahead and get the exhaust on this thing. And I've taken my flanges here. They were a little bit crusty. I had them sitting overnight in some evapor rust. And the next thing I have to work on is actually the stud for those clamps. So somebody in the past had actually helicoiled this. For some reason it's really dark. Anyway, they helicoiled this, and they did it with a standard thread, which is really stupid. And I'm OCD, so instead of just keeping it like that, I'm going to actually cut this stud and cut a metric one and just take them together for now, just so everything's consistent. You don't mix up hardware and risk stripping anything out. So that's what I'm going to work on right now. I'm going to go ahead and just get these things cleaned up on the wire wheel here, and then just chop them, take them together. Not going to be too big a deal. And then we can go ahead and start putting the pipes on. And then from there, hopefully, crank this thing over and it'll run. Alright, I'm working on getting the exhaust hung back up. I shortened this, or I welded this stud. Nothing pretty, but at least they'll both take metric hardware. So I went ahead and I just quickly tried to shine up some of these pipes And before I get the upper pipe on, I need to actually try to put my airbox and the cover and then the side cover back on the bike. Otherwise, that's just like a big mess to try to fish back in there. So I figured it was a good time to show you. I did actually buy from David Silver Spares. I'll put a link in. I bought some replacement OEM filters. The old ones, I could probably use them, but they were just garbage looking at that point. And then I've gone ahead and I've gone ahead and repainted my airbox covers. Strip the paint off those, repaint them. You won't ever see them, but at least I know they're nice. And then yeah, so it should be a nice clean setup when done. So this thing is getting real close to running right now. I actually threw in a little bit of brake clean into the carbs and into the cylinders, cranked it over, and it kind of lit up. So I'm getting pretty excited. I went ahead and I mounted the pipes on here after I cleaned them up, and they look really good. Just a little bit of polish on them. And then I'm getting ready to go get some fuel line. I'll install that, fuel filters, reinstall the petcock on the tank, and then from there we should be making noise. So I'm really excited about it. I'd love to take this thing around the block today because it's so gorgeous outside, and with everything going on, we've all been cooped up a little bit too long, so this would be a good excuse to get out. But anyway, next I'm gonna go ahead and switch this over, and you'll see me working on the bike, and then see if we can get this thing to make some noise. So a couple other things before we go ahead and try to get this thing started. I need to actually adjust the throttle cables. Now, you're not gonna really be able to see this unless I hold the camera or position the camera, but these bikes, the carbs aren't on a fixed sync or a fixed like bar for the throttle. So you actually have to adjust the cables to pull on the blades at the same time, and you usually do that just by eyeball. And then when it comes to synchronizing the carbs, there's actually a screw right here on either side that adjusts the throttle blade itself. So you have to kind of play around with it. It's not an exact science, and this bike won't be perfect because to sync it you usually would have to kind of stick your hands in front of the exhaust and just go by feel, like an old wizard with a screwdriver and whatnot. Just that's just how you have to do it. So being that this bike is missing one muffler, the pull side of the exhaust might be slightly different. So it's never going to be 100% perfect, but we're going to get it as close as we can. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work on adjusting these, and it's just going to be by eyeball, like I said. So like right now, I know the right one pulls a little faster. So I'm going to see if I can move the camera here. Okay. Here you can see the throttle blades. You can see the right side moves a little faster, so we can adjust that by two things. We can either move the right cable inward or the left cable outward. So I'm going to go ahead and put the right cable inward a little bit, if I can, with the gloves on. A little tricky. A few turns there. It's still a little early, so we're going to go ahead, thread that in a little further. I'm sure this is riveting information here. Okay. Alright, that one's still a little early, so we're going to go ahead and back technically the right side of the bike, but the left side on the screen out a little bit.
Lever button.
Okay, here's a better view of the throttle adjustment. So here you can see the sync. If you notice on the left side of the screen, what would be the left cylinder pulls slightly early. So I'm going to back out the right cylinder, just give it a little bit more tension on the cable. That looks good to me. So then from there, we're going to go ahead and just lock down the jam nuts. And this is also the same process. The threads here is how you adjust your play and your throttle. And that's just got almost too much tension right now. but we'll see. We'll make sure it actually bottoms out on the idle screw. That should work fine. Okay, so another tip here with the fuel system on these old bikes. You can see on the petcock, this section here has a little bit of mesh to it. And that's to filter the fuel. But most of the time on these old petcocks, even if you rebuild them, you really can't do anything about the pre-filter setup. And sometimes within the tank, on the actual inlet, there is a filter setup, and sometimes those go bad. I've removed them before. So one thing you generally always want to do, it's just as a safety thing to keep you from having to keep cleaning your carbs or prevent, any kind of debris from getting in there and causing your float to be open and then overflow fuel into your garage, and then it creates a big smell and your girlfriend or wife or mom or whoever yells at you. Anyway, just get some fuel filters. These, I've been using them for a long time. These are literally just like generic, lawnmower ones. They can support like a 1/4 inch line. I generally use 3/16 on a lot of stuff. I don't prefer this fuel line, but that's what I can get right now. And I'm sure all that will be changed with the new owner anyway. So I just want to get the bike to run. But right now we do want to definitely put fuel filters in, because even though we've sloshed the tank around, we've cleaned it out the best we can, there's still always going to be a little bit of particulate in there. And you just want to make sure that does not get into the carburetors, because if they get in there, then that debris can flow in and cause your needle not to seat. So that causes the overflow, and then that fuel drip that you see a lot from bikes that'll be sitting. It's just because the float's been stuck. So anyway, it's just a good precaution you should always do. So you'll see me. I'm gonna actually use it's a twin line setup on this bike. So one line out of each into the fuel filter, so it'd have 2 fuel filters, and then a line to the tank, or to the carbs I should say. So I'm going to route those right now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put a fuel line on here. And another trick I use is actually to use a little bit of heat. And I buy a 3/16 line, where you could usually use a 1/4 on this, but it fits a little sloppy. So I just use like a 3/16 line, put a little heat to it. This where it gets a little soft. You can usually see the ends kind of start rounding over a little bit. Softens it up, and then from there it can expand, slide up there, and then it actually hardens and creates a really, for me, a really good seal, from which you could do some safety wire on top of that, or another clamp or something. But this is just a good, something I've been doing for a while, and it's been working for me. And it's the same process to get it on the end of the fuel filter here. Okay, so next up is we're going to go ahead and put the petcock on. Now within here, if you can see, you'll probably remember from the assembly and disassembly video, there's an O-ring that sits inside this nut here, and that is to seal the petcock to here. But an extra precaution is to use a little thread sealant on here. Now I think it's best you avoid the white, like plumber's tape. I actually use a little bit of thread sealant, and it's this OD like 31230 part number pipe joint compound. I've had good luck with it, but this won't put fibers or whatever through the system in which you're trying to seal, and you can apply it nicely into the threads for a nice seal. And then from there, these thread at the same time. This is like a left-hand thread here and a right-hand thread, so they kind of thread onto each other all at once. Kind of a neat little setup. Get that close. Make sure it's clocked right. Starts to tighten up. You just take a crescent wrench or an adjustable wrench. I literally heard somebody just bitching about, or somebody making remarks about calling it a crescent wrench the other day. I get that, but man, There's other things to worry about right now. Not some kids calling it a crescent wrench. It should be called an adjustable wrench. Turn this a little bit. Still a little loose. And you don't got to get crazy on this thing. I think that's good enough. So this is installed, and now we can actually take our fuel lines and determine our filter length and position, and we'll get that dialed in next. Okay, now that we have the petcock installed, we can go ahead and do our fuel lines and finally our fuel filters. So I'm gonna do this one nearest carb to the nearest outlet. Looks attractive like that. So we know our total length is going to be about right there, and then we'll put the filter in about right there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this. Get my length marked here. Obviously not an exact science. The idea is to cut the hose and not your finger. All right. So you know that will fit. And then we want the filter about this position. Now there are arrows on here. You want to make sure it's flowing in the right direction. So it's going to flow out of the petcock into the carb, obviously. So we'll cut the hose about right here. Okay. And that gets us our upper piece. And again, we're going to go with the heat gun. Okay, and obviously that would be too long if we went ahead and put the filter in. It would still work, it'd be fine, but if you're gonna do it, just get it looking right. Kind of slowed down there. You can actually just put a little bit more heat to it. Nothing crazy. Loosens it back up. Keep sliding, keep working it on there. That works for now. Okay. And now we have our cut here. I realize I wasted a little bit of material by doing it this way, but it's a good visual representation of what I'm doing here. One more time with the heat. That one went on flawless. So that's one side done. I'm going to go ahead and I'll just repeat for the other side. It'll look very similar. I'm going to have the filter like right about there, and then we'll be done. I'll wait a little bit for this to kind of set up just a hair. Throw some gas in this thing, and hopefully hear some mighty CL350 engine noises. got fuel. Fuel to the carbs, and so far none of the overflows are leaking. I did rebuild the carbs, so if they leak, that doesn't really look good for me, does it? Give it a shot. First shot. This thing probably hasn't ran in a decade. Kind of fizzled out. It's finally getting hot. It could be not drawing fuel through the tank. Even though there's fuel in the lines. Yep, that's what it was. It just started flowing again. That cock doesn't seem to want to work on reserve, so it might be a blockage in the passage I missed. I bet it fires up fine now. Let's try kicker.